one thing that I want to happen to me.
You only get one wish. It's something like you work for it and you attained it for sure.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, and I know exactly what I want. I want to be commissioned by the New York Presbyterian Psychiatric Institute, specifically the one in Westchester, to make an installation piece, a art piece for their hospital.
Can I ask you why specifically that?
That's the hospital I was put in. So I want to make this transitional object piece for this hospital. Like, that's what I want. Hi, my name is Ophelia Arc. I'm from New York and I'm currently based in Queens. My art is primarily yarn, crochet, but I'd consider myself like a research-based, multidisciplinary artist. Doing art is like a form of penance, but it's also this sort of like reward in that. I describe it as a sort of jouissance of pushing yourself through something and like suffering for it. As a result, like doing that action is the reason to live. For me, yarn is a material I gravitate towards because of the ease of use for me. It's become like a second language, but usually I'll use any material that the idea calls for. I'm more in purpose of serving the idea than serving the material. I will wake up, I'll do like a workout routine that I usually do, but I'm mainly focused on contortion and flexibility. One, because it feels good, but two, I'm very interested in the ways that my body is implicated in my practice. Then from there, I'll commute to the studio. I'll crochet on my walk there. So I see my work as like just a form of research, really. It's the execution of input. I am very interested in information, and my topic of interest is usually based in the realm of like philosophy, mainly psychoanalysis. I've read a bunch of science textbooks, I've read a bunch of theories on different mathematicians, so I'm very much into following the rabbit down the hole. But a very reoccurring metaphor in my practice is psychoanalysis, and that sort of understanding of oneself through that practice and mode. Crochet, like doing it while I'm doing something else, it allows me to be less fidgety, but also there's something about movement that allows me to retain information better. I read while crocheting. I love a physical book, don't get me wrong, but the reason I have to read a lot of my stuff, other than cost, online is because it allows me to crochet while I read it. My shows are usually surrounding a text of sorts, and those are all read through crocheting. It allows me to retain the information. Kind of like that idea of like chewing gum while you study. It helps you, that muscle memory of the thing allows you to further connect with the information you're taking in. Crochet and just doing things by hand is very time consuming. But more than that, it's laborious. I have injured my hands many times. I have chronic back pain, which I've had for most of my life, so it hasn't helped. I'll know when I'm taking something too far when I can feel the knot in my forearm begin to like bulge out, and I can like feel the pain really happening. That was starting to happen yesterday. There are moments of it, it's like, why am I doing this? This is so laborious. I really could have just got a knitting machine or whatever, but it's so important to me to make it from hand, to be important in the process, to be needed. I'm creating a reason to like, be here in a way. If one is to pursue a creative endeavor and be devoid of the normal constrictions of what a usual working class person would have to do, you have to suffer a little, I think. And that is what I pay to be here. I think my work ethic and my mode of making something is really important to it. It has to be done by me. because if it's not done by me, it can be done by anyone. And if it can be done by anyone, it shouldn't be done by me. Like, why am I here? This gives me like purpose in a way. It's very much making a job out of like this idea that people have that art isn't a job. Well, I just made it a job. Like, I'm in here probably more than most people are of the 9-to-5 workday. And that's because I want to be, but also because I like the pain of it or the gruelingness of it. So for me, when I run out of yarn, it's like a cleanse. Like, it's time for a new batch, so I'll bulk order it. I'll usually order a set of dyes, and that's when I'm experimenting. I'm interested in what happens, because when you're working with acrylic yarn, which is my base, it's not a one-to-one. I could dye something black, it won't turn black. It's actually going to interact with the color that is already pre-dyed and set in a different way. So I'll use different color bases and different colors to mix. And from there, I get an understanding of like what I'm working with. Then I put them all up, and that's my color palette. So that's what I'm dealing with. And when I'm working on something, usually an idea, I have been going into my own archives just because I've been doing this for quite a bit of time. So I'm able to go back and see something that I want to flesh out more. For me, if my work didn't have meaning, I wouldn't be doing it. If it didn't mean something to me, I just wouldn't do it. It is a very lonely endeavor to be chasing in the pursuit of money. This is a horrible way to chase money. The idea of that is so just jarring to everything. I'm very personal with my work. If someone were to really look closely at everything that I've done in my oeuvre of like the past 5 years, you could really map out my life.
So, thank you so much for joining today. And I'm just going to start by just throwing some questions out to Siri and hearing.
I don't believe in institutionalization in the way it functions today. I was tricked into being in the hospital, and I was kept there for a really long time on a few occasions. So for me, it's more so, I don't think it made me better. There's a paradox in this idea. It's like, well, you want to be perceived as better, but I'm as obsessive as I was then right now. I'm just doing it in a way that people find palatable. There's a paradox of, you hate this place, but you also miss it. This happens a lot with prisoners. This happens a lot with, of course, psychiatric patients, even hospital patients. This idea of this like reliance on this system, the paradox of like wanting to be free, but also not knowing how to exist outside of it. I think I chase a lot of that in the work I make. I'm working on this unicorn piece, and I've been thinking about this unicorn for a really long time, probably like 10 years. There was this one experience I had when we were doing crafts in the institution, and I made a unicorn. I really liked unicorns. I made a unicorn. And the nurse thought that the horn was too pointy, and you couldn't have pointy things in the hospital. So they broke off the horn. In Catholicism, in mythology, the unicorn, it was believed that its horn can cure ailments. They thought it'd purify water. They thought it would, heal wounds. I was like, isn't that funny? Like, they took it off. It's like, this thing could have cured ailments. Obviously it can't, it's just a piece of clay. But I found that paradox really interesting. This, like, the whole ethos behind this thing and some sort of bureaucratic system. I'm making a clay sculpture for therapeutic purposes. The nurse proceeds to break it. It's always stuck with me. I've really thought about, what does this mean, like, in terms of, personhood and autonomy? What does it mean to have an institutionalized person's belongings, stripped from them, broken? This is the thing I own. This is my own making in this place where I'm supposed to be getting better. And I am treated as subhuman in it. And it really made me think of the politics of that. I've read a lot about Foucault's idea on, madness, but as well as, the function of the institutionalization. But for me now, looking at it, being able to research about the unicorn, as a kid, I wouldn't have thought to do that. So now I am also aided by the information I've learned. I had no idea, unicorns were this whole healing thing, this mythos that people were searching for. They were searching for an answer to cure them. A lot of life's history is people looking for something to fix or save them, which I found remarkably relevant to what it is that I'm doing. These aren't sculptures, they're not drawings, I call them flayings, because this is, on this wall surface, but it's not made that way. I don't make it on a flat surface. It's completely made with hand. So even this is a weave that I crocheted together by hand and then flayed it and then worked on it. So I see that as the main difference. I'm composing these things together, and it's this physical thing that I then flay and beat to submission to act in this way. Even this is completely crochet all the way. This is a huge textile piece that I then paint on the latex, but its form is made in a three-dimensional way. So I more so see it very similarly. Even this was a sculpture. I made the sculpture, and then basically I did gore segments, which when we look at a map or a globe, if you ever seen a globe flat, they'll draw it out almost this opening up kind of way that if you put it together, it would make a globe, but they flatten it using topology. In a sculpture, you're basically reacting to yourself. So for example, this piece is responding to its forms. This lays like this because of this, lays like this because of this, it's responding to its body. Here, this is flayed, it is pulled, it is taut. And so it's not responding to itself, it's responding to some sort of conformity. This is a confined space. This is if I'm not mistaken, a 16 by 20 kind of wood panel, and I pull and taut the piece and essentially beat it to submission to operate in this confined way. So it's a lot more rigid. This responds to itself. This can slump over at any point. That will never do that. That's a standard. That's a very stiff. This thing breathes in a different way and has this sort of life to it, which is why sculpture will always be a love to me. That's bestie. This is my buddy. And I respect it a lot more. I'm not afraid of hurting this because it feels inanimate in a lot of ways. But this, I'm I don't know, I'll instinctually kiss my sculptures for no reason. Or give them a hug or say sorry if I bump into them. There's this sort of personifiedness to them. This little guy, which I didn't finish, but is for something. Crochet should not do that. That's not right. I think all of this that I'm doing is striving for this bigger goal. My goal in life as an artist, even if it sounds kind of weird or niche, is, going back to this hospital. G.W. Winnicott talks a lot about the transitional object as being this thing that allows the infant to gain autonomy from the mother. When we think of the hospital, specifically my experience, which is not very different from everyone else's when they're institutionalized, there's this sense of being lost when you leave, and I felt that way for sure. My dream would be to, be commissioned to make this large transitional piece or this transitional installation that allows for someone in there to really transition out of that space, leaving the hospital, being able to learn more about what it is that they lived with or witnessed or saw, being able to see the rabbit hole it takes them down. I think, if my work can do anything for people, I would hope that it would teach them that there's nothing wrong with you per se. There's just a place you're not putting it into. All the energy I had in my own self-destruction isn't gone. I'm just not self-destructing anymore. I'm actually putting it out into the world, into this like physical manifestation of these pieces. The reason why I want my work in psychiatric hospitals specifically, one, scene of the crime, right? Like I want my specific hospital. But also I feel like it gives an option. A lot of times when we're thinking of mental health care and, you know, getting better and all this stuff, it's getting rid of the way we think of the world. I don't really know if all these illnesses are a bad thing. I think it's just a mishoned, ability. I see my art as proof, some sort of proof that it's not that you're like sick per se, it's just you're doing it wrong. You don't have to change yourself as a person. You could just allocate that to something, like give yourself to something else as a form of like salvation. If I could be a reason or an entry point for someone's obsession or sort of way of being to be put into like this rabbit hole of my life and all the things I've been making and like documenting publicly, might I add, I think that'd be amazing. And I think if somebody told me that when I was younger, it could have saved me a lot of trouble. If someone offered me that instead of saying, oh, you're broken, this is how you have to fix it, you have to be normal. What does that even mean what does it mean to be sane in an insane world? What does it mean to act normally when nothing's normal? I think that's a waste. I think for as much of the hardship it may have caused me, I feel lucky. I think I'm actually profoundly unique in the way that my mind works, the way my obsession functions. I think it is, now that I've found a place to allocate it on my story or even finding this video, right? I think it'd be all worth it. I feel especially, any outcasts in society, prisoners, people institutionalized, people held in these sort of in-between airless spaces. You have no choice, you have to live. And you are the way you are. I think learning how to hone that into something that can be really beautiful is important as a way of preservation.